But 3 people I trained, Kelsey, Brian, and Lindsay, were already in the conference room, folders in hand, laughing like they belonged there. Maybe they did. When I asked Megan Ross, her face did something strange, like it cracked and then tried to hold itself still. Maybe it was just an oversight. I'm sure it wasn't intentional. She didn't look up when she said it. I nodded. That was enough of an answer. Back at my desk, I opened the drawer and found the mug they gave me, my second-year best teammate ever. The paint on the letters had started to flake. There was a hairline fracture near the handle. I hadn't noticed that before. Someone dropped a paperclip near the printer and chuckled too loud for the room. The kind of laugh you use when you want to sound busy or important. In the reflection of the darkened screen, I looked like someone who was trying not to look like she was waiting. My name never made it onto the announcement slide. There was a bonus round that winter. Kelsey got one. So did Brian. I opened my envelope and found a holiday card signed, "Thanks for your continued effort." The ink smudged where the pen had skipped. I kept the card in my drawer anyway. My mother once leaned over at a birthday dinner and whispered, "Maybe you don't ask for enough. People forget you're even there." I looked down at the gift I had brought homemade, wrapped in parchment. No one opened it until the night was over. I didn't push back. I filled in the blanks. No one noticed. I rewrote agendas after the meetings. I scheduled syncs I wasn't required to attend, just in case someone missed something. "I'm glad you take notes," Lindsay told me once, closing her laptop before the call ended. "It saves me the hassle." I smiled then. Or something close to it. The year I was passed over for promotion, I printed my own feedback form, rated myself quietly, and filed it away. I thought if I waited long enough, the silence would break. At the holiday party, Cheryl raised a glass and toasted the emerging voices shaping our future. I stood at the edge of the room holding a cup of lukewarm cider. No one said my name. I didn't speak to anyone that night. I just folded the paper napkin in half, then again, until it disappeared in my palm. Some things don't fall apart all at once. Some things take years to fade quietly while you're still trying to stay whole. Some things hurt less when you pretend they never mattered. When Glenmore sent that first email complimenting the structure of our pitch and noting how refreshing the clarity was, I saved it. Not in a bolded folder, not in any shared drive, just a quiet screenshot buried among receipts and draft invoices. I remember showing it to Cheryl, holding the screen steady, while her eyes skimmed. They probably just appreciated the team dynamic. "Don't overthink it." She turned away before I could respond. I didn't show anyone the screenshot again. That same month, our department celebrated 3 birthdays in 1 week. Paper hats, supermarket cake, store-bought cards passed from desk to desk. Mine came late. The handwriting was rushed, maybe 3 names at most. To our teammate, no name, no message. Just the title, someone gives a placeholder. My sister once glanced at a marketing podcast playing from my laptop. I had recorded it months before, interviewed about emerging trends and campaign ethics. "Wait, weren't you told not to use the company name?" She was right. Cheryl had asked me to remove any brand reference. Too risky, she called it. I still listened to the episode sometimes just to hear if my voice cracked. There was a folder I kept under my desk. Notes, flow charts, alternative outreach strategies. I once handed it to Brian unlabeled "No request for credit" when he said he was stuck. He used the pitch in our next team presentation. Cheryl clapped at the end. "You've really stepped up," she told him. He didn't look at me when she said it. The office gave out small framed quotes one year as desk decor. Mine read, "Do great work and it will speak for itself." I placed it behind my monitor. Eventually, I turned it around. The quote faced the wall after that. Once during a family dinner, my father tapped his glass with a fork and looked straight at me. "You always did well in school, but you never had much presence." He returned to his meal. No one said anything. I thought about responding. I didn't. Somewhere along the way, I stopped correcting how people saw me. Not because they were right, just because the effort became heavier than the silence. And silence at least doesn't forget your name. Some things hurt less when you pretend they never mattered. When Glenmore sent that first email complimenting the structure of our pitch and noting how refreshing the clarity was, I saved it. Not in a bolded folder, not in any shared drive. Just a quiet screenshot buried among receipts and draft invoices. I remember showing it to Cheryl, holding the screen steady while her eyes skimmed. They probably just appreciated the team dynamic. Don't overthink it. She turned away before I could respond. I didn't show anyone the screenshot again. That same month, our department celebrated 3 birthdays in 1 week. Paper hats, supermarket cake, store-bought cards passed from desk to desk. Mine came late. The handwriting was rushed, maybe 3 names at most. To our teammate, no name, no message, just the title someone gives a placeholder. My sister once glanced at a marketing podcast playing from my laptop. I had recorded it months before, interviewed about emerging trends and campaign ethics. Wait, weren't you told not to use the company name? She was right. Cheryl had asked me to remove any brand reference. Too risky, she called it. I still listen to the episodes sometimes, just to hear if my voice cracked. There was a folder I kept under my desk. Notes, flow charts, alternative outreach strategies. I once handed it to Brian and labeled no request for credit when he said he was stuck. He used the pitch in our next team presentation. Cheryl clapped at the end. "You've really stepped up," she told him. He didn't look at me when she said it. The office gave out small, framed quotes our 1 year as desk decor. Mine read, "Do great work, and it will speak for itself." I placed it behind my monitor. Eventually, I turned it around. The quote faced the wall after that. Once during a family dinner, my father tapped his glass with a fork and looked straight at me. "You always did well in school, but you never had much presence." He returned to his meal. No one said anything. I thought about responding. I didn't. Somewhere along the way, I stopped correcting how people saw me. Not because they were right, just because the effort became heavier than the silence. And silence at least doesn't forget your name. I didn't expect it to end that quietly. The folder had already been opened when I walked in. She didn't gesture to the seat. I sat anyway. There was a printed page on the table. It wasn't a performance review or a client complaint. Just a screenshot. A small comment under my LinkedIn post. "Great catching up, Emily." Cheryl didn't lift her eyes. "Trust is difficult to rebuild once it's gone." She turned the page slowly, like she wanted the sound to fill the room. "We don't keep people who operate in the background." I looked at the nameplate on her desk. The edges of the lettering were chipped. She pushed a form across the table. The kind you don't sign with the discussion, just with a date. "No one here expected this from you," she added. "Not even Brian, who once handed me an unfinished proposal at 8:52 p.m. and walked out before I could reply. He sat on the leadership team now. He wasn't at the meeting. He wasn't anywhere. My pen left a small pause between my first and last name. I didn't ask for a copy. Megan from HR stood near the door. Not close enough to speak, not far enough to leave. She looked over once briefly and then studied the floor like it held her instructions. I passed my desk without touching anything. I didn't take the charger or the sticky notes or the keychain I had clipped on the second drawer. The mug stayed. White ceramic with peeling blue letters. I turned it so the words faced the wall. There was a voice in my head. Not Cheryl's. My father's. Some people don't know when to stop taking up space they were never invited into. He'd said it once while reaching across the table for the salt. No one had corrected him. My mother had passed the pepper instead. I paused in the elevator. Megan said something behind me, procedural scripted, but I didn't catch the last part. I just nodded. I didn't look back. No warning. No conflict. No explanation that would have sounded different if spoken by anyone else. They didn't forget me. They erased me on purpose. I never liked long goodbyes. They always felt more like performances than closure. The email came out before I reached the corner. We wish Emily the very best in her future journey. Every chapter ends, every door opens. No signature, no specifics, just a formula polished for forgetting. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it. I read it once, then closed the screen and didn't open it again. There were no inbox cleanouts or farewell lunches, no paper boxes. I left the few things that mattered and took only my umbrella and charger. I didn't want the jacket that still smelled faintly of toner and takeout. I didn't want the framed photo of the conference I never got to speak at. I sent one message. Thanks for always holding the elevator when I was carrying 3 coffees. Wishing you calmer mornings. Rachel replied with a heart emoji. Nothing more. That felt right. The bus ride home was almost empty. I sat near the back, not by the window, not by the aisle. Just somewhere in the middle where no one would think to talk. I pulled my badge from my bag. The clip had bent. The photo was 2 years out of date. I placed it inside a plain envelope from the bottom of my purse and pressed the seal shut with my thumb. My phone buzzed. A former coworker had tagged me in a post best of luck to Emily. Grateful for all you've done. I didn't comment. I changed my LinkedIn headline instead. Just one phrase, Emily rebuilds, that night my mother called. You didn't even fight back. I said I didn't see the point. Then maybe they were right about you. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. I let it stretch. There was a pen I used to carry for client meetings, slim, gold-lined, engraved with the company name. I found it wedged in the lining of my tote and dropped it into the trash without a sound. It landed softly against a crumpled receipt. Later, I reset all my passwords. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to remind myself that something had changed. Not for them. For me. Some exits aren't escapes. Some are acknowledgements, and silence when chosen can be louder than anything ever said aloud. I hadn't realized how loud the absence would be. There was no buzz from incoming messages, no color-coded calendar reminders blinking in the corner of my screen, no quick ping from a group thread I was always expected to manage but never invited to lead. I moved a folding table near the window. The legs were uneven, so I placed a paperback under one side. It wobbled anyway. I set up my old laptop. The battery didn't hold, but it turned on. That was enough. The chair was metal cold on my back. I didn't mind. I opened a folder labeled Ideas Not Used Final Batterie and scrolled through campaign notes, phrases I had once believed in. Let people feel seen. Trust builds quietly. I copied one into a blank document. Not for work, just to keep. For breakfast, I boiled pasta and steamed carrots in a mismatched pot. The strainer had one broken handle. I placed the bowl on a dish towel to keep the table from getting wet. It felt deliberate, not lonely. My sister called during lunch. "You're not working still." She didn't wait for an answer. "Well, I hope you're using this time to figure things out. You're not 22 anymore." I muted the phone and let her voice trail off into the cushion. There was a stain from coffee I spilled last winter. I traced its edge with my thumb. It had faded into the fabric, quiet, stubborn. That evening, I pulled my white blouse from the laundry line. The sleeves were wrinkled uneven. I didn't iron it. I folded it and slid it into the back of the closet. Not out of bitterness, just distance. I drew a rough mind map on printer paper, circles and arrows. No title at first. Then, in the corner, I wrote "Second Wind" and underlined it once lightly. The next morning, I played music while I ate. Not the news, not podcasts, just strings, no lyrics. I let it fill the space the alarms used to claim. A neighbor's dog barked twice, then fell silent. I didn't look out the window. I let the music play a little longer than it needed to. I didn't have a plan yet. But I had air. I had hours. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to be useful to belong to my own day. Recognition never arrives the way you hope it will. The message was brief. Emily Glenmore would like to reconnect about the account. Grant Ellison asked for you directly. The number wasn't saved, but I remembered the rhythm of how he signed emails. No punctuation, all lowercase. It was him. I typed "sure," happy to talk, then deleted it. I tried again. "Available later this week. Let me know what you need." I didn't add a smiley. I didn't ask how he'd been. The meeting wasn't sentimental. Grant was polite, professional. He looked tired in the way people do when they've outgrown the place they once praised. "The qualities slipped," he said, resting one hand on a leather folder. "Timelines missed. Messaging inconsistent. It's not what we signed up for." He didn't mention me. Not directly. He spoke like someone trying to fix a contract, not a relationship. "We're exploring other options," he continued. "Vantage seems promising." He left the last part open-ended like I might fill it in. I nodded. Nothing more. Later that evening, Tara sent me a forwarded email from Cheryl. The subject line was "Client Retention Narrative." The content was short. "We believe Emily's unauthorized communications contributed to the shift in loyalty. This should be documented." No attachment. Just a line meant to cast a shadow and move on. Tara didn't add a comment. She didn't need to. I copied the email, pasted it into a new thread, and addressed it to Diana. "Thought you should be aware." That was all I wrote. I didn't include a defense or explanation. I didn't suggest what should happen next. I'd learned by now that silence used correctly doesn't mean defeat. It means calculation. That night, I watered the plant I kept by the window. It had outgrown the cheap plastic pot I'd found for it when I moved in. The roots pushed lightly against the sides, still contained but not comfortably. My brother once told me over dinner, "People like, you don't leave marks, Emily. You pass through." He didn't look up from his phone when he said it. I remember thinking maybe that was true. For a while. Now, I don't need to argue with that voice, because if they came looking, it wasn't for who I was. It was for what they lost when I left. I used to think that boundaries were something you earned after proving you didn't need them. The emails come now with my name at the top, not the bottom. No more silent carbon copies. No more drafts sent and edited by someone else before being sent again without credit. In the Glenmore meetings, I let the silence sit longer before answering. I've learned that the first person to fill a pause often gives the most away. When asked about expectations, I say them plainly. No disclaimers. No, if that works for you. Just clear terms. It feels unfamiliar, but it fits. There was a request during a strategy review, an extra deliverable outside scope, outside hours. I looked at the brief, then looked up. That's not mine to take on. Nobody flinched. Nobody penalized me for drawing a line. The air held steady. That was new. Katie dropped by my desk that afternoon. You're not what I expected, she said, while setting down her water bottle. Polite, but sharp around the edges. In a good way. I didn't correct her. I didn't explain what I used to be. I don't need to be liked anymore, I said. I just need to be respected. She nodded like she'd been waiting to hear someone say that out loud. I ordered a new desk. Solid oak. It came in pieces I had to assemble myself, and I did it slowly over the course of 2 nights. I didn't mind the weight of the wood or the smell of finish that lingered on my hands. It felt earned. On the corner where the old mug used to sit, I placed a plaque I found at a second-hand bookstore. You don't owe loyalty. You earn it. The letters were slightly uneven. Someone had carved them by hand. It made them feel more permanent. My father once told me, you bend too easily. People will stop checking where you stand. He wasn't wrong. Not back then. But now, when I look at the calendar and see my name printed under lead, when I set an out-of-office reply without guilt, when I sign off on decisions without waiting for applause, I know I'm not bending anymore, and I no longer whisper permission to take up space that already belongs to me. Some endings don't need announcements, just completion. The invitation from the ethics board came folded, not formal. A polite request to clarify events, contribute evidence. I didn't hesitate. I didn't embellish. I compiled the thread of messages, the internal notes, the forwarded comments from people who thought no one was watching. I labeled them, attached them, and signed with my name, nothing more. Before I hit send, I opened the folder on my desktop, labeled Career Documents. The file inside was still titled Emily Stonebridge V1. I skimmed it out of habit. The opening line read, Driven team player seeking long-term growth in a fast-paced environment. I closed it. I printed a new version. The header had 3 words spaced wide, strategic, respected, free. I didn't include a mission statement. I didn't need one. That Friday, I walked back into the lobby at Stonebridge. The receptionist had changed. She didn't know who I was. That felt strangely clean. I signed in, retrieved a printed copy of an old tax form from HR. No small talk, no eye contact. On my way out, I placed my key card and a silver office key on the counter. No explanation. The woman behind the desk nodded without asking anything. I left the building without turning around. At home, I updated my email signature. I removed the company name. I shortened the address. Emily Dobwabate Second Wind Strategies.com. There was no launch, no press release, just a quiet shift in how I showed up. My phone buzzed during dinner. A family group chat. Someone had posted an old photo of me, long hair, corporate blazer, name badge half visible. Remember this phase? My sister replied. She used to look so eager. No one tagged me. I didn't delete the message. I didn't comment. I closed the app and put the phone face down beside my plate. I kept the framed quote on my desk, but I turned it toward the window. Not for others to read. Just for light to hit it differently. I used to believe that release meant letting go. Now I know it sometimes means reclaiming what should never have been handed over in the first place. And when you reclaim it quietly, it stays. I don't check who emails are from before opening them anymore. This morning I made tea in a cup with no message printed on it. No boss lady, no keep grinding, just plain ceramic. I carried it to the table and opened a notebook with frayed edges. There were notes on a project I hadn't named until now. Second wind. At the bottom I had written, "Only work with people who don't need a reminder to be decent." My phone lit up beside me. A message from the ethics board. Cheryl Davenport had been officially removed from the industry registry. No fanfare. Just a single line. I didn't respond. I didn't save it. I turned the phone over and looked at the cactus near the window. The new growth was uneven, awkward, but still growing. I used to think I needed acknowledgement to breathe right. Now I take up space without asking. I make plans without waiting for approval. I live mornings like this, quiet, unfinished mine. And when I folded the last letter from the drawer into an envelope, I didn't write a return address. Some things, when sealed properly, never need to come back.